Welcome back to Alpha Models. So in this video I'm going to be working on the interior for the Ferrari 812 Superfast. So as you can see, I've already primed the interior tab. I've still got the rest of the pieces to do. So I've just been going through, looking at the instructions, working out how I'm going to approach this, because there's various pieces for the dash to be assembled, and then there's the interior tub to put together as well, and there's various photo etch pieces along with the resin pieces to go. So what I've decided I'm going to do is, where you've got things like these, where you've got two photo etch pieces to go together, I'm going to do those first. And the same here, where I've got the photo etch that has a decal on, I'm going to have a look to see how well they fit. And I think my plan is, I'm going to take, so for instance these, where the clocks are, I'm going to take the photo etch, paint it, prime it, decal it, clear it. I'm just going to check first before I do that they do actually fit in the section that they're supposed to, with no fitment issues, because the last thing I want to do is have it all painted and then find that they don't actually go in. I think I'm going to take that approach because it's probably going to be easier than trying to mask off and put clear in all of there after I've done it all. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. So like I said, I've got pieces like these down here that I'm going to put together. These plates here are going to go together, so I'm just going to get on with those, and then I'll come back when I've made some progress and something to show you. So now that I've worked out what I'm doing, I've got all of the pieces laid out either on cocktail sticks or lollipop sticks, crocodile clicks, etc. So all the resin pieces on the right, photo etch on the left, so I'm ready to move over to the spray booth and start spraying. So over in the spray booth now, so as usual I've got the airbrush loaded up, so I'm using the Zero Paints Metal Etch Primer for the first part, so I'll just knock the fan on and get spraying. So as always, I'll just do a test spray on the piece of paper towel just to make sure it's coming out of the airbrush properly, and then just start building up some light coats. One thing that I have found with the etch primer is to build it up in light layers, in particular, because if you go in quite heavy on the first coat or two, then you can end up with the paint peeling off, which obviously you don't want. So yeah, light coats on that bit. Okay, that's all the pieces finished off now. So for the resin pieces, I opted to use the 2-pack grey primer, the same as I did on the main body. I think for the resin pieces it just seems to bite a little bit better, and it's just a little bit nicer to use for those. The other one's a bit thinner, it's perfect for photo etch with the finer details. Yeah, there's just different options as to what you can do. So I did make a little bit of a mistake with the airbrush that I chose. Ordinarily for the thicker resin I'd use my Iwata Revolution, which has got a 0.5 needle in it, but I ended up sticking with the same airbrush and using my Eclipse HPCS, which has a 0.35 nozzle in, so it's spitting a little bit, so I've got a slight texture to the parts, which for the interior it's not the end of the world. It doesn't really matter that much. It'll just add a bit of character to it, let's say. So the important one with the photo etch pieces, where you don't want to lose the detail, that etch primer is perfect for it, because it bites into it nicely, but it leaves a nice smooth finish, as you can see there. So that's perfect for what I want for those. So yeah, I'll just let those dry off a bit. I mean, they're touch dry all over, but I'll leave those a little bit and then start getting some colour down. Like I did with the outside with the carbon trim, I chose to go with the carbon on the inside as well. As you can see, I've got the decals down, so used hobby design decals again for these. Like with the outside pieces, they went down with no issues. Some microset, microsol, got them laying down nicely, as you can see. So one thing I had to do was make up my own masks for the pieces, because I'm going for multi tones on the pieces, things like the steering wheel. I didn't want to cover in carbon fibre and then lose a lot of the detail. So same with the door panels. So I had to make up my own masks. So as you can see there, the centre part and the two front sections at the top and the bottom were masked off, created the template, cut the decal out and then laid that down. In the same way I did the side of the seats, got that all soaked down with microsol to comply with the complex shapes and everything. Centre tunnel, I've just done those front edges of, along with the part of the centre console where the switches would be, so that was all wrapped as well, just to give it that extra look, let's say. The same process was applied to the dash, doing the centre panel along with the air vents around and a couple of other little bits where the switches are and such. So just trying to see if you can see in there. It's not the greatest thing to actually get on camera with a light on this shot, but yeah, all inside of there I had to mask off, create the template and get the decal laid down nicely, so if you can see it there with the catching on the light. Same again for the flappy paddles on the gear selector, had the carbon trim over them. So for the smaller interior parts I chose to use the zero paint clear lacquer over the 2K that I would normally use, purely because they're such small areas, and like I said with the decals, I don't want to lose too much detail, so I opted to use this instead. So in the same way that I always use it, I'm just building up the layers in very thin coats. One thing that you do need to make sure of though with the carbon is to make sure you've given it sufficient time to dry. If you don't, and you end up with an air bubble or some liquid still underneath one of the decals after you've cleared it, you run the risk that it could explode, as I've experienced in the past when I've rushed things, and then it just makes a big mess. It looks a lot worse than it should do, and you basically have to start again. So big tip there is make sure you've given it plenty of time to dry, double check all your work, make sure it is settled down properly and there are no air pockets or liquid underneath to avoid that. So just finishing off the steering wheel now on here. One thing I will say is I am only spraying the areas that I've coated with the carbon. I'm not going over every single part of the piece. That just adds extra layers to it, which I don't want to do. And as I said earlier with the primer stage, it has got some texture to it which I'm happy with, so I don't want to cover all of that up with the clear coat, so I'm avoiding those areas to make sure that that doesn't happen. So you can see here as I do the dash, I'm just going into that small area and making sure I get over the vents properly. So that was the first pass with the light coat, just to seal the decal in. So it doesn't look like much there, but it has got a very light mist coat over that. So after I've built up a few more layers, you'll start to see the gloss come through, which I did off camera. So after I've left that to dry for a bit, I've then masked these pieces up, as you can see. So I'm now ready to move on to the next bit. So I used the Zero Paint black leather and just went over the pieces with that. So as usual, light coat, start off checking that your flow from your airbrush is coming out okay, and then just start applying it. So as I said before, this is over the primer which got that bit of texture to it, and just doing a light coat there. First time I've used this paint, so I was interested to see how it comes out and what the finish looks like. So you can see here, if it picks up on the camera, the colour that's come out. So with it being a light coat, it's a little bit lighter than it will be when it's finished, but it's got a nice eggshelly sort of finish to it, which I was happy with. So after that first coat, I went over it again with a couple more coats just to darken it up and give it more of the colour that I want. So the end result was a off black with a finish somewhere between matte and semi-gloss, which I was happy with. It's got a very sort of real leather look to it, so it was perfect and just what I was after for that final effect. Moving on from that to the next step, I decided to give it a textured look with the micro balloons, which I did off camera. I might do another video at a later date showing how I did that. So I'll just cover over how I did the masking, which I speeded this up a little bit to make it a little bit less boring, but I thought the amount of people ask me about masking, comments that I see on groups and forums as to how to do that, I thought I'd just film this bit as I'm doing it, just so you get an idea as to my technique for doing this. So start off with laying the big piece over it, trying to get it pushed down as neat as I can, pushing it in with the cocktail stick, and then just building up smaller pieces just to cover over the gaps. So where the carbon trim is, that's still masked off from doing the last part, so I don't need to worry about that. So as you can see here, I'm just making that fit under there, giving it a trim so that it fits nicely, and I don't have any bulges in the masking tape which paint can get under, so you need to avoid that. So yeah, this is how I go about it. So occasionally you get a blip where there's some bleed through, but for overall it doesn't happen. So same with the door, start off trimming that top piece there, and then score it with the cocktail stick to get it where I want it, cut it with a knife. Make sure you use a sharp knife for this because you don't want the masking tape tearing, and with a sharp knife also it allows you to just go over it one cut, and then there's minimal risk of actually going through the paint layers as well, which can leave a mark. So if you've got a light primer and dark paint for instance, and you cut through the paint, your primer layer is going to show through, and then you're just going to have a light line, which obviously you don't want. So yeah, just building up more of the layers on here, as you can see. Another trim going around there so that it's masked off exactly where I want it masked, and then I'm ready to move over to do the painting and the micro balloons. So just whiz through this quickly. Not really much to say as I'm going through this stage now. It's the same process again, conforming it to the edges, bedding it down nicely, cutting it with a sharp blade, trimming it off, usual process. So I'm just coming to the end of the masking now, so I'm just doing the interior turb, and what I'm going to do with the interior is a process called flocking, which again I'm going to do off camera on this video, and I'll do another video at a later date to cover the method that I use for doing that. So for now I'm just getting everything masked off ready for that process. So I'm going to skip forward now after I've done the micro balloons and flocking to start unmasking everything, which is one of my favourite parts because you get to see the results of all your hard work and what you've been doing, and hope, with your fingers crossed, that you haven't got any bleed through or problems, or when you lift the tape off you don't pull anything from underneath, especially if you use a sharp blade or pointed tweezers as I'm doing here. So I'm just being very careful on this bit, so you can see as I do that the final results of my hard work. So you can see the carbon fibre there, the leather trim, and hopefully the micro bloom effect that I had. So just move on to the second one now, and I'm just going to fly through these so you can see the results as I do it. Next stage after all the painting's done and masking removed is to do the decals. So that's the kit decals that you get. You get 4 circles for the wheels and nothing for the steering wheel. So I've decided I'm going to use these to attach to the steering wheel, or at least one of them. As I've got them, I might as well use them. So they are a sort of gel decal, sticker actually, that you just peel off and stick on. So they're really nice to use and very high quality. So just pick that off, and like I said, it's a sticker, so just stick it where you want it. In this case, right in the centre of the steering wheel. So I'm surprised Alpha Model haven't provided something for this, because it's quite an obvious part, and when you look through the window it's noticeable by its absence. So like I said, I'm a little bit surprised, but there you go. I've got these, so I might as well use them. So that's my steering wheel all finished off now. So move on to the dash now. So this came with some metal emblems in the kit, which I've attached. So I don't know how well you see on this camera, but there's one in the centre there that just says Ferrari, and then on the right hand side it's another one that says 812 Superfast. which after I'd applied it, I painted the 812 in black and the Superfast in red as per my reference photos. So it's a little bit difficult to see that because it's so small. It doesn't show up very well on camera, and it shows up even less when you're trying to look at it with your eyes. So next bit is there's a tiny little photo etch piece that I've painted which attaches into the centre of the dash, so just trying to remove that from the lollipop stick that I use for painting it, which sometimes is easier said than done with some of these pieces. You obviously have to put it down or attach it as best as you can so that it doesn't fly off when you spray it with the airbrush, because the pressure from the air potentially could blow it off if it's not stuck down well enough. So sometimes it makes removal a little bit difficult. So there you go, that's what it is. Just a bit of mesh for one of the, I'm assuming it's a vent or something, and it just sits in the top of the dash there. So just check that it actually fits properly and goes where I want, and then get a little bit of super glue, which I've got in a trusty milk bottle cap, and then apply it with a toothpick just so you can control how much glue is going on, because we know we need a tiny little amount of that, and then we can put it into place. Might need a little bit of adjustment and manoeuvring just to get it into its final locator, but I'm using the Bob Smith Gold glue for this, which doesn't fog, or I think balloon is another word for it, where you get these sort of white marks around it. So it's safe to use on things like this. It's not going to cause any problems or have any after effects with the colour or anything. So that's what I started to use for things like that now. So now onto the air vents, which I've painted up with, I think it was Zero Paints aluminium for these, and then I've just given them a black wash on the inside of them just to bring them out a little bit. So I started to use a fret saw for this, but then realised with the size of them it was a lot easier to use some side cutters, so that's what I did. So then I just gave it a quick sand on the back just to get rid of the bulk of it. It doesn't need to be perfect because this is the bit that's getting glued in. So back to my Bob Smith Gold super glue. So just put a tiny little bit in the hole, so it doesn't need loads because it's only a small piece. So pick the piece up and in the hole it goes. So, and then it's a little bit of a tight fit, so I think I ended up just trimming a little bit off the edges of it as well as I was doing this, just to get it to fit a little bit better and not cause any damage to anything. So obviously because it's tight fit, I ended up going off camera so I could actually see a bit better what I was doing, which is a little bit unfortunate, but yeah, repeat that 4 times, and now this is the last one going in. So overall it wasn't too bad. Like I said, just a little bit of sanding on the edges of those. With them being small pieces, it's not the easiest thing to do, but we got there in the end. So you can see I was just test fitting it there to make sure it's actually going to go in, and I've sanded it enough. So that's the final bit of the dash going in there. So that's them all fitted now. So that's the dash as it currently sits. So next bit to do is the switch gear or AC controls or whatever they are for the underside. So I gave these a little bit of detail painting and a silver wash around the edges just to try and bring out some of the details. Again, I'm not sure how well this shows up on video, but I'll get some photos up on my page soon so you can see it a little bit more in detail. So that one just sits under there like that. So after a quick test fit, make sure it's where I want it and there's no issues that are going to cause any problems, I can get that glued into place. So then onto the clocks. So these had the clear lacquer applied at the same time as the carbon, so quickly remove those from the stick and then I'm ready to attach them. So as you can see, I'm still using the same glue for all of this. So, and because I test fitted them before, I know there was a little bit of slack in there, so I know any excess paint that's gone in there, it's still going to clear that gap, so I don't need to worry about checking the fit or anything like that. So Very carefully I'm just pushing down with the cocktail stick because I don't want to damage that clear coat that I've laid down, because then it will end up looking a mess. So then just go on to the left hand side one, same process again, a little bit of glue, and then carefully try and position that in where I want it to be. This one fought me a little bit more, as you see it didn't go in quite straight, so then I had to give it a bit of manipulation with the tweezers, and even more so than the first one, extra care needed to be taken because it's metal tweezers to not damage it, and I just sort of pushed it down carefully just in the corners with the cocktail stick just to get it where I wanted. And then I've got the centrepiece to put on, so there's a separate resin piece that just goes over there that I'm not sure why they moulded this separately, maybe if people wanted it a different colour or something like that, just to make it easier for painting, or maybe it was part of the mould process, made it easier, I'm not quite sure. So then the centre dial is able to be positioned same way as I did with the others, so I just very carefully hold it with the tweezers to not damage the clear coat. I left this for a good few days after clearing, possibly even a week, to make sure that it had dried and I wasn't going to have any problems, because I found sometimes, even though clear looks like it's dried and it feels like it's dried, it can still be soft. So you can, if you push it with your nail or tweezers or cocktail stick or something like that, you can still cause damage to it. And unlike the 2K that goes rock hard, I think the normal lacquer can still potentially be damaged easier than the 2K, so just a little bit extra care taken on that. So next bit I did was to get some Tamiya acrylic clear. So I just want to fill in with a small brush over those decals now, over those clock faces, because this will give it a sort of raised glass look like you get on a real car. So the clear lacquer is quite thin, so it was good enough for just sealing the decals and everything, but then this one really sort of brings it to life and, like I said, gives it that sort of glass-like appearance. So just going around with the brush, very fine pointy brush for this, and then just pushing it into the corners and then applying quite a lot of it so that it bulks up, and then it just flows into the corners and then it will settle down nicely. So as you can see there, I'm just pushing it in, and if the light catches it, if you can see, you sort of see the effect I'm talking about compared to the others. And then it'll settle a little bit flatter than that, so it's not bulging out in the centre, and then it'll give it a nice effect. So I'm just going to go and finish those off and then do the centre one as well once I've done that one. So you need to make sure you get into all the corners and look carefully, catch the light to make sure there's no areas that have been missed, because otherwise it'll look like there's a kink in it or something like that, which you don't want. So I always just carefully go around and just double check that I've got it all the way around the edge nice and neatly, so it avoids anything like that. And then the same process on this, I'm just going around the edge, pushing it into the corner. Because there's a little raised piece on this, it makes it quite easy to push it in, and then the centre will really take care of itself. And then I found a little hair, so get rid of that before it dries, because otherwise you'll be in real trouble. So there you go, that's that piece done. So next up was the door panels. So they made the actual pull handles as separate pieces on here, so it makes it easier for painting and detailing, and especially because I wanted to do the carbon trim, it made that piece easier to do as well. So just a quick test fit again, as is normal practice, and then a little bit of glue where the notch is, and then just run a bead along where the rest of it will sit, and then carefully get your piece that you want, make sure it's in the right orientation, because it's got a section there which I've painted with the leather just to just bring it out where the actual grab handle is, like you'd have on the real car. So the same again for the second one, just a bead of glue around the edge, and then in that hole where the pin, or whatever you want to call it, would sit. So that's your door panels done. So nice and simple. So as you can see, all the interior's got the flocking on now, so I can just speed through and get on with attaching things. So they come with nice photo etch mesh for the mat pockets that sit behind the seats. So just carefully seeing how that fits. So again, same applies, a very small bead of glue just around the edge on this, and I'm still sticking with the Bob Smith gold, so I'm not going to have any issues with this. And then like you can see, just on the very edge of that, and then I can just drop that in there where it needs to be, and it'll sit nicely, and the top of it just sticks out just a little bit, just to give it that sort of 3D look, so it actually looks like a proper pocket rather than just looking like a decal or gluing the whole thing stuck on flat, which won't quite look as good. So here goes the second one, and that left hand part of it where it doesn't have any paint on is where it was stuck to the lollipop stick, but because that's going at the bottom and at the back, it's not going to be seen, so it doesn't matter that that part's not painted. What's important is the front part, because that's the bit that ultimately gets seen. So a few more photo etch pieces need to be applied. So there's a small kick plate that sits next to the accelerator pedal that just goes on the inside of the tunnel there, and again a little bit fiddly to apply, and I used my reference photos for this to make sure that it was aligned properly, because the instructions, although good, don't give you precise positioning for things like that. There's no actual locating points or anything, so you need to rely on your reference photos, which I think Alpha Model know that people are going to build like this. This is not a basic kit for a beginner, it's designed for advanced modelers. So yeah, it's got some photo etch mats here which I'm just applying. So the same was done. I applied the leather paint to those around the bit where your feet rest and the surround and the locking nuts as well, and then masked that off and applied the flocking to it to give that appearance. So just applying the brake pedal there. As you can see, I've already done the left hand side footrest, so now onto the right hand passenger mat. So same again, a little bit of super glue on the underside of this. Again, it doesn't need a lot. This isn't something that's going to be moved around, so it's not going to be shaken around, thrown upside down or anything, so it doesn't need loads of glue on these parts, just enough to hold it in place. So it's a nice touch that Alpha Model do that. So here's the passenger footrest. I'll just put a little bit of glue on the back of it. I have to be careful with this piece because the holes go all the way through. If you put too much glue on, then it will ooze through the front, and then it'll look a mess because it'll be really difficult to clean up. So just a bit caretaken on that, and obviously I succeeded because I didn't glue my thumb to it, which is always a bonus. So yeah, there you go, make sure it's in the right position. So now onto the straps that go on the parcel shelf at the back. So same again with the Zero Paints leather paint, and then after it was all painted and dried, I scraped off the buckle. Rather than, initially I was going to paint it, but I thought it's a metal piece with photo etch, it makes sense to scrape the paint off to leave it as a metal buckle. So that's what I did. So a little bit of glue on the underside, again being careful because there's holes on there that you don't want them to go, the glue to go through, because it will make a mess and you will stick your fingers to it. So there's 6 lines on the back there. So there's 4 for the other parts, which I'm not quite sure what they are, and 2 for these actual straps. So again, I used my reference photos for the positioning to make sure that they were where they're supposed to be, and they actually lined up with those lines that are moulded into the kit that you can see there. So onto the second strap. And these are nice pieces as well, made up with 2 photo etch pieces, so it's actually got, again, that sort of 3D appearance that you want, where it looks like part of the strap is separate where it comes over, so it looks like a proper buckle rather than just one flat piece which looks flat. So just fly through these. I didn't bother filming all 3 of those going down because that would just be boring. So that's the last one going in. Like I said, I'm not sure what these are. That's a leather strap that goes down the middle of what looks like an aluminium strip. So it's obviously some kind of fitting, but there's no buckle or anything attached there. So that's what I painted it like, because that's what my photo showed. So slight scratching one of them that I had to touch up, but that's all part of modelling. So next in is the seats. So it's starting to come together now, looking like a proper interior. So make sure that the correct one goes on the correct side. So the switch gear goes to the outside of the car, not to the inside. So before I forget, I'm just going to attach the buckle catches, which I painted with semi-gloss black and then just painted some red for the actual push part of it, for the release mechanism. So these just go on the inside there. One on that side, and then in a second I'll do one on the other side. I also painted the bolts with some X11 silver. I'm not sure how well that's actually going to show up, but that's part of modelling again, isn't it, that you do these little details that don't always get seen. So onto the centre tunnel now. So I've already pre-tested this to make sure it actually fits where it's supposed to. So onto the gluing part of it, which the same process again, a little bit of glue, doesn't need loads. And although I've done the flocking, I am confident that I got rid of any excess from that, so I don't have to worry about it just lifting it all off. It will stick. So then I've got the centre part of that central tunnel where it's got the switch gear that sticks up. So again, some nice decals in the kit for that just bring it to life. So with the carbon fibre on that, I think it just looks quite good. Next little piece to do is the armrest, or I think there's some probably storage in here as well, going off what most cars are like. So it's not a great fit on the top of here because that's a curved surface and the actual part has a flat base to it, so it wasn't particularly great trying to get that to line up. I don't know whether it's designed as an option, so you might have it, you might not, so maybe you're supposed to sand that part flat before applying it. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's the way I chose to do it anyway. So just manipulating it a little bit just to get it to sit nicely, and then check to make sure it's all straight and level, exactly where I want it. So all of these different colours and things are starting to bring it to life. So on the backrests there's a lever for pulling the seats forward, so you need to make sure you get that on the correct side of the seat. So that goes on the right hand side, on the passenger side. So just test fit to make sure it's going to go where I want it, which on these seats I've done multiple times. So a little bit of glue, and then we can position it where we want it, like so. As I put it down, I made sure the bottom of the backrest sat flat with the base of the seat rather than pushing it to the back wall, so that it's got that upright appearance, because otherwise it wouldn't look right again. It'd look like it had just flopped or fallen over, and it would also create a gap in the corner of the seat, which you don't want. So eagle-eyed viewers would have seen that I've attached some seat belts as well. The kit comes with the buckles in photo etch form, and then I just used some black 2mm ribbon that I had just to finish that off. So now moving on to fitting the door panels, which it's nice that they mould these separately. Some old kits have the tub as all in one, and it makes it very difficult for painting and detailing things like the door panels. So with a car like this that's got quite a bit of detail in it, it's nice to have it moulded, and also in separate pieces you saw earlier. So just a nice bead of glue along this edge, just to get it to stick. Still sticking with that same Bob Smith glue, I haven't changed that yet. So all the way to the top, all the way to the front, all the way along the bottom, and then we'll get a nice good fit. So as I put this in, I'm just checking that the back of it is flush all the way around when it doesn't fall back off. And then once that's all flush and I'm happy with it, then I just get a little bit of tape just to hold it in place. So because it's just a butt fit, it's not the greatest thing to actually get it to sit. So like I said, a little bit of masking tape just holds it in place while the glue dries, and means that it's not going to move, it's not going to fall off or anything like that. So the same process went on to the second side. So it just ran around this side now with the bead of glue. Same process as before, just a thin coat just to get it to grip. Doesn't need loads, doesn't need soaking in it, because the more you put on, the more it's going to ooze out, and the more mess it's going to make, and the more cleanup, and potentially ruin something. So it just needs enough to get it to hold. Nothing more, nothing less. So again, lining it up with the side where it needs to be, and same problem as the other side, because it's just a butt joint. It just takes a little bit of manipulation to get it to sit exactly where I want it. Ultimately this piece doesn't need a lot because the body and everything holds it in place. So same as the other side, just put a little bit of masking tape on there just to get it to hold, so it doesn't move around while the glue's drying or anything silly. So that's the tub all complete now. So all I've got to do is finish off the dash part with the steering wheel. As you can see, I've attached the accelerate pedal to this as well. I've seen some people put that on the actual tub part, but looking at reference photos again, it comes from above where the dash is, and it's further forward a little bit on the mounting, so that's what I opted to do. So for the steering wheel, it's 3 pieces to attach this. So the first part is for the flappy paddles for the gear selector. So I just put a thin bead of glue around the back of the steering wheel, and then I can apply these. So make sure that you get the orientation right on these. The longer, thinner parts point towards the top, and also make sure they're straight so it doesn't look wonky or anything when you look through the window. So that's where I want it now. So then onto the actual mounting part. Not sure what this is called, it's just the bit that goes between the steering wheel and the actual dash. I'm sure it's got a proper name, but I don't know what it is. So yeah, that's got the pin. Again, I've test fitted that, make sure it goes all the way. What you don't want is to find that that pin's too long or the hole's too short, which makes the same difference when you put the glue on, because then the steering wheel will be sticking out, and again you're going to have a mess that you're going to have to sort out, and it makes it harder to deal with once you put glue on. So always test fit, make sure it's where it wants to be first. So as you can see there, I'm just test fitting that before I put the glue on. So then a little bit of glue on the inside of there, in the hole on the other side, and then I can fit it in. So that part does have a orientation to it, so you need to make sure when you're fitting that to the steering wheel that you do get it the right way around as well, which it's quite obvious looking at the instructions and photos and such which way it goes. So there you go, that's the dash complete. Final stretch now is just putting it all into the body, so you can see that in the background there. I've zoomed the camera out for this part as well so it doesn't actually interfere with anything. So dash actually goes into the body like that and just sits on that ledge there. At the moment I'm just dry fitting it, I've not put any glue on this, just as I'm finishing it off, and then the tub slides in there. I also realised at this point that those rear arches need painting black, so I went over those after I finished this video with some black paint just to make it fit with the rest of the rear arches. So there you go, that's the interior finished. So just try and get some shots in there. Again, the light's not great for this, trying to get in there. I did try to move the light to try and get it better, but it was a bit difficult. I'll get some photos up on my page anyway once this is done, so you can actually see the details that I've put into it. I know they don't all show up on camera very easily, so with it being all moved around and everything, still photos are obviously a better way to do it. So just give you a few more shots of that just so you can see different angles and everything. Alright, so this is the end of the video now, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching and I shall see you next time.